there was a space for having a luxurious experience and having a better looking product and a more functioning product, and breaking away from the traditional one size fits all method. We took on a $13 billion cleaning industry with $100,000.
Today's guest started a company from scratch and sold it to Unilever. Welcome to the Inspired Money Podcast, where we explore positive money stories. I'm Andy, host and financial advisor at Runnymede Capital Management. Strap in, because we're going to shift our perspectives on money, get inspired so we can make a bigger impact. Welcome to the Inspired Money channel, where you get interviews and money tips. Our guest today is Gwen Whiting. She and her business partner saw a huge market opportunity and founded the Laundress, an eco-friendly line of detergents and fabric care so people can gently wash silks, synthetics, and natural fibers like cashmere, wool, and more, all from the comfort of their own home. You're going to hear how they bootstrap their business from very humble beginnings, never taking money from external investors. This is a real success story. 15 years into the business, the Laundress was acquired by Unilever. In this episode, you'll learn very different types of risk. There's personal risk, business risk, and investing risk, the never-ending hamster wheel of needing money to grow and finance a business. This is a very common struggle for female founders. And then make sure you listen to the end to hear how a collaboration with rockstar customer John Mayer came together. Now let's get inspired with Gwen Whiting. Gwen, welcome to Inspired Money. I'm so excited to have you on the show.
Me too. Thank you, Andy.
Let's jump right in. What's your earliest childhood memory of money?
Well, I've been thinking about that question for 2 years since I started listening to your podcast. And I will try not to talk about that the entire time. But I have a very strong visual connection to money, which was I have a half brother that's 10 years older than me. And I remember sort of looking out in the backyard on weekends and seeing him show up with piles and piles of newspaper tied together with twine. And then it was bags of cans and bags of bottles. And I asked what was happening and why all of these bundles were coming to our home. He lived in the town next door. And it was explained to me that this turned into money. And he was collecting, all of these items at 10, 11 years old to have a return, to make money.
That is visual.
It's very visual. and I'm a very visual person. So there was this strong connectivity that I had a vision of work and collecting, and that could have a return and turn into something.
So we're talking today because you co-founded the Laundress, a conscious collection of detergent, fabric care, and home cleaning products. It's a lifestyle brand that was reportedly acquired by Unilever for $100 million. Take us back to, because you had this vision of collecting things and trading them in for money. But I understand that you were an entrepreneur like very early, including a tie business in high school.
Yes. So luckily I am a creative person. So that was the superpower that I could lean on. And, I was always creating anything I could, whether it was a needlepoint or, a tie-dye t-shirt or anything. And what happened was in high school, I went to a school that had a dress code, and the boys were required to wear ties. So I made neckties as a gift, as a Christmas gift, and gave it to my guy friends and my guy teachers. And then everyone started wearing these ties. And then it became a thing. There was a demand. So I then made more and then sold them at the school fairs and fundraising events, the ladies' luncheons, and where they had vendors come in. And I had my tie booth all tied up and actualized a return that I was able to buy my computer to go to college. Although I did go to college with a word processor, so the computer came later.
Yeah, I had the what was that? I didn't have a computer either. It was like
I had a brother word processor.
I can't remember what mine was, but it was like a half typewriter, half word processor. It had like a very small screen so that
Yes,
I could actually type a few lines and save that
correct.
and print it. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're old is what it comes down to.
Yes, we're old, and I apparently am technologically resistant because I think any other person at Cornell my age kind of showed up with like the first Mac.
I'm a little bit older than you. So yes, I was like especially bad. I didn't touch a computer for like the first 2 years of college. I had my word processor.
Yeah, it worked. So did I.
Okay, so you had this tie business. Like, I want to get into your early career because I understand that very early on, one of your goals was to travel and to get paid for that.
Yeah,
Is that a good goal to have?
I thought it was. I had this, because, there was a finite amount of money that I had attached to my name. So I worked at, I hustled too. I hustled just as much as my half brother did. I did anything. I cleaned my parents' apartment building in the hallways for money. I did some babysitting that wasn't my favorite, but I had jobs, and I worked at the Banana Republic in the Short Hills Mall as soon as I could drive myself to work my senior year in high school. So I was, very clear about having my own checkbook and having a paycheck. And I actually signed up for my first American Express when I was a senior in high school, which was in 1994, and my parents didn't believe in paying for a credit card. So I paid for that $50 American Express fee because that to me was important, which has served me well over the years of being a dedicated American Express user. But so just continuing this hustle and always making things come together, I had some savings, and I was a design major. I studied Cornell in apparel design, but with that study, I was in a liberal arts college with a liberal arts program. So I had to, fulfill the curriculum just like everyone else. And I really cobbled together a academic curriculum that I believed was going to serve me. So I signed up for the entrepreneurship and enterprise class at the Johnson Business School and took that undergrad course. I took marketing. I took out of my core, but I was cobbling together all of these sort of experiences and education that I thought would help me have a business. I didn't know 100% that I was going to have a design business or make apparel, which I was studying, but I knew that there was going to be a business in me because that was my entrepreneurial spirit. So having said that, I was certainly not being recruited out of college for a job. Goldman Sachs wasn't hiring me or whatever with all my other classmates who were getting recruited and a signing bonus and all these things. So I knew that I had a finite amount of money, and traveling around the world was important to me. And I looked at signing a lease and getting an apartment in New York City would be the sort of end to take all of that money I had. Like that was going to be the finale of this educational adventure. So after 2 days after graduation, I got my backpack on and got on a flight and ended up in Egypt and backpacked from Egypt to Russia and spent the summer in Moscow. I actually worked for Russian Harper's Bazaar in some weird, wild way. I just
How do you land that job? How do you get Harper's in Russia?
It's like the whole story is insane of just how I put myself out there and had a vision and had an idea and a plan and a goal and cobbled it together. And like without the internet, This is 1998. I couldn't just like Google my way through life. So, and then after that, then I got a job at Ralph Lauren, which is where I had worked as an intern in high school and in college. And that was sort of I expected to land there. I expected to end up at Ralph Lauren and be living in New York, and that would be living the dream. However, before I could get there, I still needed to like see the world first. So then I took a job at Ralph Lauren in the department that wasn't a right fit for me. And I was there for about 3 months. And then I said, it's not time yet. And I filled out the paperwork to get a student visa to move to London. And I could get to London by December 31st, to the UK by December 31st to exercise my student privilege as my student visa. And so from there, I had another 6 months, and I cobbled it together. I had like I ended up on like plan F because I was desperately trying to get a job after the Christmas holidays, which apparently like people in the UK at the time didn't really like go back to work until the end of January. It was like the longest holiday ever. And I was desperate. I was running on fumes. So I accepted, I think, plan F. And I continued to study, and I took a class on tailoring. I took a class in Italian. I was still needed to continue fulfilling myself with these educational pursuits.
This plan F, like you kind of just, from what I understand, you're not shy and you're willing to kind of grab the bull by the horns. What was plan F?
Well, I had applied for a bunch of jobs. I really wanted to work for this guy named Timothy Everest, who was a tailor, a sort of young, cool, new tailor in Spitalfields, and he offered me a job, but he couldn't pay me, so that wasn't going to work. I needed some income, and then I kept sort of going down the list, and I had some other opportunities that took too long. So then plan F was to work at Thomas Pink on German Street and sell shirts.
But you were just like picking up the phone and calling tailors to see if you could work with them.
Yeah. I love your brand. I love what you do. Would love to learn. I'm here to help and want to be a part of it.
Was the Harper's Bazaar job like that too? Did you just reach out?
Yeah, I just reached out. I'm from New York. I had done an internship at a magazine in New York. I actually had an internship in the UK when I studied abroad. I studied shoemaking in the UK, and then I took a summer internship at Elle magazine. So I had some sort of cred of exposure and capability. And they're like, this is all new. It's in Russia. They, were just like, sure, put something together and contribute. It's like I worked with some photographer. We didn't speak the same language, but we made it happen. I don't know. In retrospect, it's a little, I wish I had a better journal. I got around a city that I knew how to say 1 through 10. I would take a taxi. I would negotiate the taxi rate in some numerical form of 1 through 9, whether it was like Devana, like 2-0, like that was how I would negotiate. And then I would get into some stranger's car and then like show up to where I needed to go. Or I memorized the subway stops like visually what the Cyrillic name was because I couldn't read anything. And then when you're in the subway, you're seeing the words like come forward and backward in the train. So I knew what the words looked like in going forward, or I knew what the word looked like coming into the station with the name backwards too. You gotta like make it happen.
I mean, it sounds great for when you're young and right out of school. You're able to spend time in different cities around the world. You're exposing yourself to different cultures, all the while really pushing yourself to learn, right? Different languages, different skills. Mm-hmm. What did you say? Shoemaking?
Shoemaking. I studied abroad, a semester abroad at school, and I went to a shoemaking college in London. So it's funny because I heard the founder of Square. I always have to, his name I think is Jim McKeveney, or he's founded Square, and I heard him speak about his book about entrepreneurship and sort of like the recipe of success. And it wasn't like a how-to be successful. It was a reflection on a tendency of traits with successful entrepreneurs. And one of them that stood out to me was putting yourself in incredibly uncomfortable positions, which I was a master of putting myself in incredibly uncomfortable positions.
So that one resonated with you.
That resonated. I was like, well, I've done plenty of those.
So starting out in the fashion and design business, I feel like is not very lucrative. You get jobs where you're trying to train, you're trying to learn, you're trying to gain experience, but oftentimes you're not being paid well.
You're not paid well at all. And I actually turned down a job with a magazine because I was going to be paid a minimum wage that I thought I could qualify for food stamps with, but I was expected to wear $400 shoes. So that wasn't adding up for me. And I did have my one benchmark was I needed my job to pay me more than my college tuition. That was my benchmark.
Yeah, and you were putting yourself out there. You were trying to open up opportunities. Clearly, you were not able to accept a job for no pay. That wasn't going to work.
Well, yeah, I needed to support myself. I mean, the rule in the family was you graduate and you're on your own. There was no more tuition. There was no more room and board. That was the family rule. You're on your own.
Once you landed the job at Ralph Lauren and kind of could begin this corporate path, contrast what that money situation was like, because you were traveling to great cities and traveling well, but you're not making a ton of money. So you're kind of struggling just trying to get by in New York City, which is very expensive.
Yeah, I mean, it was the irony of the job is I ended up finding my home at Ralph Lauren, in my place. But after a couple iterations of different jobs and working with different people, and in London, I had met the team that was from New York at Ralph Lauren, because I eventually ended up leaving Thomas Pink and working at Ralph Lauren, and they were opening a flagship store. And so then I finished my time in London. So then I had all these connections to call on when I came back. And I was so fortunate to have some people really interested in helping me out and helping me find my place, my proper place within the organization. And I eventually got placed in home design. And so I say I graduated college as an apparel designer, and I graduated Ralph Lauren as a home designer. So there's this thread of continuing education in this journey. But I was in a department with an incredible team. I mean, my boss, Calvin Churchman, was my biggest cheerleader for starting this brand. My senior boss, Ellen O'Neill, has been my mentor and guider and rock since this time. And I'm incredibly lucky to have such strong mentorship and support from this team. So now I have this incredible job, this incredible team. I'm surrounded by the best talent. We're making beautiful product. It's a dream. Like, I loved my job, but I'm still struggling to, pay the rent every month. I'm living in a 6th-floor walk-up in Greenwich Village there's my best friend from nursery school and one of my college roommates, and we're in a 2-bedroom cobbled together to make a nook for a 3rd room. And the whole thing. But then on the flip side of that is I'm having these incredibly glamorous business trips where I'm flying first class to Italy and staying at the, incredible 5-star Villa d'Este in Lake Como. And like, so I had this like endless spending account for my work and my trade shows and all of these activities that I was doing professionally. But in contrast to, hoping that my rent check wasn't going to bounce before I got home.
Yeah, that's the harsh reality.
Yes.
In that time, do you look at your bosses and your boss's bosses? Because clearly there's a path where you start getting paid more and there's like a reward at the end. Is there a temptation to continue down that track versus what you did do, which is strike out on your own and start a business?
Right. Well, I was so young and I was so fortunate to have such independence. I mean, it's not normal that a very junior person was able to go on these business trips and really contribute and produce the way I was. But I ended up in this very unique position where I was in charge of leather and fabrication specifically for furniture. And I was the only one who was doing it. So I had, at a very low paid junior level role, was, activating sort of a work itinerary and that a much more senior person would be doing. So my reality was, if you look around the halls at Ralph Lauren, and there was a clear divide between the girls that would marry themselves off to a banker and live the Ralph Lauren life, like with real money that they could afford. And there was the people who, were there for years and years and, living that path of, a creative and being paid that way. And then there was some people who, made it to the top. And at the time, there was a lot of like, you had to leave to get a raise, or you had to threaten to leave to get a raise. So that was a bit of a fuzzy path that none of those options looked that great to me. And then I was making such a nominal amount of money that I'm thinking, it can't be that hard for me to actualize that myself. Like the bar was pretty low to match.
So when do you get the idea that, because to me, it seems like the Laundress, which I haven't used your products, but I know of the brand well. And it seems like the little label inside our clothes that say dry clean only.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, I can build a business around this. I don't believe in that. I don't believe in this label.
Correct. That label is wrong. It's the other label that tells you what your clothes are made of that you should be paying attention to. But everyone just looks at the other label that says dry clean only, or has a bunch of symbols that you don't really understand what they mean. So I always attributed, starting the Laundress to working at Ralph Lauren and having these clothes that I was getting at sample sales and the famous, Ralph Lauren cashmere sweater. And I knew that it could be washed, and the label said dry clean only. And I was on the 6th floor walk up, and I was taking my laundry bag down the stairs over to the New Jersey Transit to go to my parents' basement laundry room to take care of my items so I could, line dry my jeans and remove the yellow stains in my shirts and properly press and then hand wash all of these items that had that dry clean only label on them, which was the wool sweaters and the cashmere and the dresses that all were synthetic, that all said, and even silk, that were really washable. The problem is that there weren't really any products to use for what I was doing. So I was using baby shampoo or sort of anything but Tide and Woolite to accomplish this. And and also I was seeing other products out in the world from my traveling where, there were other societies that were less reliant on a dry clean culture than ours. However, I did find a term paper that I wrote my senior year in college, which said, "Are you being taken to the cleaners?" And I have this entire term paper, and I remember going to the dry cleaner in Ithaca, New York, and asking the woman who owned it, who so generously let me interview her for a school project, why the man's shirt cost $1.99 and why the woman's shirt was $9, or and it's because they can use a machine, one size fits all machine for the men's shirts, and the women's shirts don't fit on that machine, so it has to be hand done. And this term paper is absolutely exactly what the Laundress Manifesto is. It's the same language. It was the same principles on, it's a little extra effort to separate and hand wash, but the results are there, and for the longevity and the cost savings. So it all was threading together basically since college.
I can't believe you answered that question. I'm still a little confused by the difference in cost for dry cleaning. I mean, what if you have a woman's large shirt versus a man's small? Shouldn't that be similar enough?
I just exactly would think. And in this day and age, we shouldn't be treated so differently, but that is how that happens. It's funny because I've been together with my husband for 10 years, and after he met me, he's fully taken over his shirt laundering, stain removing, and pressing. He's been empowered.
So he does it at home.
He does it.
It has to be hand washed?
No. We machine wash, hang dry, and then he presses them. But he now is the dry cleaner, no way. They will never touch a shirt of mine ever again.
So you did start a revolution.
Even
at home. So tell us, how do you start a business with little to no money?
Creativity. The quick story is, we leveraged on our resources at Cornell, studied detergency, wrote a business plan. Actually, the business plan really came before even knowing how to make detergent. And 2 years of developing a plan. And the plan was crystal clear. Every product, every market, every vision for the future was crystal clear in this plan. Then from that, we go to developing the product, which was a whole journey of, chemical creation and fragrance development and branding and tone and the whole
enzymes,
the whole thing, enzymes and labels and logos, and breaking every rule with this product creation, because we weren't looking to compete or replicate a grocery store experience. We weren't looking to have a giant orange or blue bottle that was filled with 80% water. We were looking to make the best product possible with the most authentic way, which, coming from a luxury brand, was the only way I knew. I know a luxury brand. I know what goes into a luxury brand. You use the finest materials, you use the finest ingredients, you use the finest craftsmanship, you pay attention to your branding and your messaging, and all of that is a luxury, from a luxury principle. So that is exactly what the same focus went into the laundress, and we wanted, the best ingredients and the best materials and only what needed to be in there. There's no reason for your cleaning product to have a color to it. It doesn't need to be blue or orange or be in a giant bottle that's filled with extra water. Paring down to the core purpose in that product The other thing was creating an experience that was a start to finish experience where in a grocery platform, you have all these different brands making different products. So one product is a stain remover, one product's a detergent, another is a softener, another is a starch. So then you have all these different fragrance experiences all within your one laundering load. So, being very thoughtful and purposeful in that development. Now we have products to start to produce, and where's the money? The money. I worked with the small business, the SBA office that was based out of Baruch College in New York City. And the SBA office was open to the public. You didn't need to be a Baruch student. And I had an advisor that I worked with, and she helped me prepare the financials, which was a total joke because it was all speculation. I mean, I don't even, she helped, did those spreadsheets, and I had the real business plan. And then part of that process was pairing me with a banker, and the HSBC gave us a $100,000 SBA loan based on the collateral. Remember, this is between 2002 and 2004. The collateral was our 401ks. And I think each of us had maybe $20,000 in a 401k. And that was our life collateral.
That's like risking everything you've got practically.
Yeah, but it was in the 401k. I didn't feel like I had it. It was like this random account that was supposed to take care of me later in life.
Okay, so you got this loan. Let's take a step back even earlier than that, because is the detergent business, is that capital intensive? Where does your money need to be allocated first in this early stage?
Well, I guess to go back to the business plan, I should tell you that we didn't even have enough money to drive to Cornell and make photocopies. So we threw a for-profit party for our seed stage. So, it seemed totally normal because we would get invited to go to a party for the Young Heart Foundation, or just a fun event, cocktail party, and you would pay $20 or to go and mingle and support an event. So it seemed totally normal that we would just do the same and throw a for-profit party with anyone who would come, friends and family, and we asked for $30 to go towards our purpose. And I had written these cards that were, in this space, in this bar that we had from 5 to 7 on a Monday night. I mean, it was the cheapest scrappy space to help fund us. So that yielded about $5,000 for us to, be able to rent a car, buy some textbooks, make photocopies. That was our seed money for R&D. So that's basically the amount of money that we used for those 2 years of development. And then now it's time to launch, and you have to buy inventory. That's how it works. You have to invest in your inventory, and so you can ship out your goods. And there's minimums. You can't just make 5. You have to make 500 if you beg for it. Usually it's 5,000.
So what was that initial minimum that you foresaw needing for that first production?
So the first production was 500 pieces, and we had 13 SKUs that we started with. So that was a intensive. It basically took half of our money just to build our inventory.
So that's about 50,000.
Mm-hmm. And then we had, what was left, and then there was 2 of us, my partner and I, and I was working days and mornings and weekends and nights, and My partner was the sales arm to our brand, so it made more sense for her to quit her job first and focus on sales. Since we had the product, we now needed to sell. So that was the beginning of the forever hamster wheel of never having enough money, because you're always playing this catch-up game where you need to have money to produce, and then you need to sell it and collect to then reorder and reproduce. So it was this never-ending cycle of putting holes on the dam, which we then, the 100,000 didn't last very long, and then we supplemented the holes with credit cards.
Do you burn through that $100,000? Were you still working, or had you quit your job?
So we launched in March of 2004, and then I went full time in January 2005. So it was, 8 months or whatever of doing both.
Was that SBA loan, was that money still there, or you had already spent that?
I don't remember the exact details, but the credit cards came very quickly.
Yeah, I want to hear about that.
There wasn't.
I'm hearing that you had like a very clear vision with your business plan, your product positioning, like your company positioning, who your target customer is, where you want to be able to distribute, how you're going to sell the product. But the reality is that you need money to produce the product and to do the marketing, and you had done the R&D early on. But what does that cycle of like highs and lows look like? Meaning you have money, you don't have money. And how did the credit cards fit into this?
Yeah.
Because I hear that this is something that like you kept from your family.
Yes. My mom just learned that there was $250,000 of credit card debt, which was better for her not to know to the end.
Yeah, she's on a need-to-know only basis.
Need to know.
Yeah, is that stressful?
Oh my gosh,
as the business owner?
Never having money is stressful, and just always putting your hands over the holes. We would have an invoice, and we had to buy labels, we had to buy bottles. We had to buy all these components before we even got to the final production. So you're putting out all of this money up front, and if you didn't make a payment, like your process got stopped. So as money became, as we had to purchase, we had to find more money. And we knew that we had already exhausted, a bank. We got a nice chunk of money that they had first position and all of our collateral. So there was nowhere else to go from there. Looking around for alternative lending and financing, there was supposed to be all these angel investors and investments for women and all of these things. But that was $10,000 with a 9% APR. And I was like, well, that's ridiculous, because I can get $20,000 from American Express with zero APR. And then when that zero APR wore off, then I found another credit card to roll it over to. Which is so ironic, because I came from a family who only used cash. I mean, the credit card only came out with a rental car my entire life. So I was not taught credit card manipulation by any stretch of the imagination. So it was just easier and cheaper and a direct route that I could control. I could control getting more money from a credit card. And this is at the time when you would open up your mailbox and there would be 3 envelopes from Discover or, Capital One or whatever. Do you remember getting envelopes for credit card offers every day? It doesn't happen now, but it turns out that if you actually fill out those cards, they actually send it to you.
What kind of credit limits? And these are personal, not business.
They're personal.
Wow.
Yeah. So because I was such a valued customer of American Express in 1994, it's 10 years later. I have a good credit history. American Express had a bunch of different cards. There was a blue card. And I got the business card. So I started off with a business card as well. But you could just personal, and then I would get one, and then I would tell my partner to get fill out one, and so it was just this constant roll of credit cards that we were just using to make ends meet.
Gwen, what is your risk profile?
Apparently really out there.
You're willing to put yourself in like uncomfortable positions. We heard that. Your family, like growing up, sounds conservative. Like they would not approve of credit card debt.
No, and then it's also funny is that when I set up, it's funny because when I set up, I set up my 401k with like the T. Rowe Price woman at Ralph Lauren. I was like 22 years old, and I did give her my risk profile, and she was like, kind of asking me how old I was, like asking me if I was like retiring next year. She was like, what? Like, this isn't normal. So I am highly risk averse in these traditional financial institutions. But when I have my personal risk is very different, because I was so focused and so dedicated and so determined to do this business because I knew I needed this product. I knew I needed these solutions. And I knew that if I had this need, that other people would. And fundamentally, everybody has dirty laundry. And everybody has items that are important to them. And it doesn't matter if it's something that's expensive, or your favorite t-shirt from college, or something you found in the attic that was grandma's that you want to resurrect and cherish and enjoy and save that. But I fundamentally believed in what I was doing. I knew I made an incredible product. I knew it worked. I knew it was an enjoyable experience. I knew that I was going to be able to empower people to turn an everyday chore into a luxurious experience. I knew all of this.
Was your conviction unwavering even in the face of $250,000 of credit card debt?
100%. 100%. And the sort of the fuel that kept the burners going was after, during all this time, never once having someone complain about a product experience, never once having someone complain, I can't believe I spent $18 on the soap and it was either a bad experience or a lackluster experience. Not once.
That is amazing.
And I was getting, I had an email box that called Ask the Laundress, and I answered every single question that came in from customers and people who weren't even customers. They just had laundry conundrums and needed, we were considered the experts, so we answered. And just hearing, over and over about solving small problems for people, and saving a stain or resurrecting something or such an enjoyable experience, or they can't believe their sweater looks so different and is fluffy and soft. It's not squashed and crunchy and gross from the dry cleaner, or getting out an armpit stain or an odor. All of these things were empowering, and that was the fuel that made it, incredibly wonderful to do every single day. I mean, it's nice to solve big problems, but it was also very fulfilling to solve everyday small problems for people.
It sounds like very much a roller coaster.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't mean that I didn't have like major anxiety issues, and it's a lot on your shoulders. Like, I aged myself.
Well, I think entrepreneurship in general is not for the faint of heart.
Right. It's not the easy way. It's not the easy way to make $1.
And you're living proof of that. At what point, like in this journey, you launched the company in 2004, You're trying to get money, you produce things, you get money, you establish a store in New York. Like, at what point, how long does it take to be like profitable and really see that there is like a promise here, that your dream is coming to fruition?
So we were relatively profitable fairly early on because we didn't have a choice not to be profitable. So since there was such a lack of funding, we could only do what we could do and only grow how we could grow organically. So I would say breaking even was the first goal to hold, and then profitability was to follow. But because we were self-funding, we were always rolling over year to year, any of these profits to reinvest. And as the landscape of starting a business or running a business is very different today into 2021 than it was in 2004. We unbelievably launched with an e-commerce platform, which is kind of funny because since you and I both discussed how we were technologically resilient, but it was interesting. So we had three different parts of the business. We had our direct to consumer arm, where we were collecting revenue daily from transactions. We had our U.S. wholesale business, that a lot of that was credit card, and then larger vendors had to be terms. And then we had our international businesses, where we were exporting containers of product all over the world, to Europe and Asia, Japan, starting with Japan, then we expanded to Korea, then we went to Taiwan and Hong Kong, and the last few years, the biggest expansion has been through China, mainland China. So we were just, organically growing, and throughout this sort of time was the financial crisis, and how to survive through a financial crisis was you're underfunded already, and every limit on those credit cards that used to be $20,000, we'd make a payment and the new limit was $18,000. So we were just effectively paying down the balances with no extra credit coming in. But we were able to leverage our international businesses that weren't as affected by the crisis, that were still performing. And there was a portion of their sales that was upfront. We would take a deposit, and that would help us pay and then ship and then collect. And then our direct to consumer also, we were able to have that direct revenue source, but also then really lean into this message where using our product could save you money. And from that first glance, it looks like it's expensive. It looks like it's only for luxurious items. It has a perception at a glance, but the reality was this was an eco-friendly product, which we didn't really wear on our sleeve particularly at the time. And this was a dry clean alternative that saved you money. So you could, for $18, you could wash 30 sweaters instead of dry cleaning 2 for $9. I mean, this was sort of the value proposition. The other thing, that the product was incredibly concentrated. So while it looked like a small 16-ounce bottle or a liter bottle, you were only using 1 ounce. So you were like the traditional cup of Tide was 8 ounces, 1 cup. So there was all these value propositions to the product that we started really vocalizing, and getting people around this concept of saving money from dry cleaning, but also saving money because you can preserve your clothes longer, or your linens or your sheets or your towels. And that itself was another savings.
Which is amazing, because given your positioning for the brand, you wanted it to be luxury, you wanted it to be high end. So to make that shift into, look, you can save money on your dry cleaning bills, that's a pretty big shift.
It is, but we wanted it to be a luxurious experience. But we weren't saying it's laundry and it's cleaning at the end of the day. It's a consumer product good. So there was a space for having a luxurious experience and having a better looking product and a more functioning product, and breaking away from the traditional one size fits all method. The biggest joke I have is that, we took on a $13 billion cleaning industry with $100,000
And just kept growing.
and just kept at it.
And doing whatever it took.
Exactly.
To keep feeding the machine.
Beg, butter, and stealing, exactly.
It's amazing.
So, yeah. And so much of that also was, aside from putting the holes in the dam monetarily, was really having authentic and true relationships with our vendors. And that was something that I really honed at Ralph Lauren, because I was always asking our vendors to do the impossible and stand on their head. And then after all of that, then they still had to go through accounts payable and wait forever and ever and ever to get paid. So I was very skilled at seeing this whole trajectory, and how if you had such a good relationship with the people that you work with and were honest about everything, about timelines, about expectations, about reality, and about payment, that you had built a trust. And so I took that very seriously with every vendor that we worked with. And, I have incredible relationships with everyone, from my label printer to the bottle guy, to everyone.
Are you ever afraid of asking?
It's funny because I'm not aggressive. And so I still have that very Presbyterian, waspy, we don't talk about things ingrained in me. We don't talk about money. But, so I think that's a funny dichotomy where I can talk about making something and getting something produced in a very transactional business way.
Yeah, I'm hearing your superpowers sound like your creativity, your conviction, but also developing and building relationships and the power of asking, because throughout your career, it just seems like you're not afraid to ask and you don't fear the no's.
I guess. On reflection, that seems to be part of the story. But I feel that I was given that grace with being surrounded by incredible, generous people. So it wasn't like I was in a position to get the negativity of the no, perhaps. But to me, it's if you go about something with honesty and integrity, if the answer is no, the answer is no. But if you're coming from the right angle, it's coming from a very different perspective than asking for something that you aren't entitled to. You're asking for something coming from the wrong place or positioning, where you're being greedy or grabbing. You're coming from the negativity. But I felt that I was always coming from this other source, which made it a much more easier and open place to come from.
Gwen, it's amazing your customers, the customer experience has been so good. You said that, you just don't get that many complaints. You have many, many happy customers. I noticed John Mayer is among them.
Yes.
And how does that collaboration happen?
This is the made-for-TV movie version. John is an interesting guy. We all have sort of lived his tabloid life, but he got really he's into fashion in his way, and he got really into collecting textiles, and he got really into Japanese design, which is all part of this vintage and technique and indigo and all of these in that space. And then he moved to Montana, and then he got really into the Southwest and serape and all of those sort of Native American techniques as well. And so he started collecting. And he also started buying these white t-shirts that were expensive. They were a couple $100 each. And he was determined to preserve these investments that he made. He bought a very expensive white t-shirt, and he was, taking it seriously. And he wasn't willing to make this a disposable item. So a friend of his, a neighbor, said, well, John, of course you need to use a laundress. Duh, you want to preserve those shirts, that's what you have to do. So this neighbor and friend of his got him into our brand and got him into hand washing his t-shirts. And then he posted on, I guess he was using Instagram at the time. He posted, and it was, hand washing is my new meditation. And then he was, it was like a bottle of tequila and our soap in his sink with a t-shirt. So then so our team saw this and reached out to him and, let us know if you ever need anything and whatever. And then he started touring with the Grateful Dead, the Dead & Co. And so we would hear from him every once in a while and say, oh, I'm going to be in Atlanta, but I've totally run out of this. Can you send me some of the hand wash? Because we had these hand wash samples that he liked to have on the road instead of carrying the bottles everywhere. So we just started this dialogue and, sending John soap, along his tours whenever he needed something. And then we got a message from him saying, I'm going to be in New York on Wednesday, and he wants to meet us for a drink. You're like, okay, I think I'll make myself available for a drink with you, John. So my partner and I go meet him at the Carlisle, and he's there, and he forgot to book a table, but of course there was a table available for us. And we sat with him, and we were, talking and chewing the fat for a couple of hours, and we're kind of he doesn't need a date, we're like, yeah, sure, we're two blondes, and we're not that, he doesn't need us to hang out with. And then he really wanted to get to know us personally and really understand if we were people that he wanted to attach himself to. And he, after this getting to know us and really sharing our stories, and it was hilarious because he has a credit card debt story too, where he got a credit card when he went to college, and he said something so funny. I wish I could remember verbatim, but it was yeah, you go to college, you sign a paper, they send you a credit card, and hey, welcome to college and debt. There's no life lesson on how to manage this credit card or what to do and what not to do. And it was very funny because it was so true. No one gets the talking to, or at the time when, we weren't sent with our parents' credit cards. And so he had a whole debt
credit
story.
Card debt spirit animals.
Exactly. We are debt spirits. And he talked about how he bought his first recorder, and, that's how he launched his career with his credit card debt, so he could buy the equipment he needed to record what he wanted to sing and to make. So fast forward, he asks us to collaborate with him. And of course, we're of course, John, we'll collaborate with you. And we made a product together, and he was very involved in the product development. He wanted our signature laundress lady in a very specific outfit with his guitar, and he sent pictures of his guitar so my friend and the artist could replicate the guitar to the right detail. And it was a nonprofit project, so a big portion of the proceeds went to the Montana Land Trust. So that was how we ended up laundering with John Mayer.
Yeah, that's very cool. I saw that he said something about he didn't really want to make money from it. He wanted to donate. As a company, did you see a lift in revenues from having a partnership with John Mayer and having that publicity?
So we had a lot of a lot of lifts along the way when we were very fortunate to be able to collaborate with really in a very meaningful way with other brands. So when I'd say our biggest lift was collaborating with J. Crew. And we made product for J. Crew and we were sold in their stores. And that was a big putting us on the map and to a lot of other people. And that relationship lasted for a very long time. And it was a very natural and authentic partnership. So when you have those kinds of collaborations, you get more out of it when they're real and they make sense. We collaborated with another brand of fragrance perfume company called Le Labo, and that program still continues today as well. Where there's a trend to doing purposeful things that have longevity. We never focused on like a one-hit wonder. That was never part of the recipe. And then the John collaboration, definitely, was fun and fun videos and People Magazine, and John has a significant fan base. And he's like, my fans are crazy. They're like super fans. And we had an event outside of our store, and our store is teeny, so we had to sell tickets. And there was like, the fan, we got to see, full on John's biggest fans.
Yeah, what was that like?
Up. It was interesting.
Having this performance at your store.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
By a guy who could like sell out Madison Square Garden.
Correct. And here we're selling like 100 tickets on Prince Street, selling laundry detergent. And there's a video, you can look it up, John Mayer and the Laundress, and he's teaching us how to play the guitar, and we're teaching him how to wash. I mean, it was fun. He was a fun guy. But people, it's insane. People are bringing him donuts. Someone brought him a challah bread. I mean, there was like a lot of interesting gift giving happening.
The fringe benefits of being a rock star. That's
exactly.
Fresh bread is just one of them.
I mean,
so I heard you say that originally you had a vision of selling the Laundress in 5 years. It took 15. Mm-hmm. So it was like an overnight 15-year success story.
Yeah, a rapid success story, 15 years.
I like to ask all the Inspired Money guests, how do you define success?
So I really struggled with what that means. I never felt success along the way, and I could never really take in and absorb, oh, that was a success, or that moment was successful, or have this sense of owning success throughout. And, it's considered successful when you exit a business and actualize the plan and the reality and the goal. That's a success. But it's not like now you're just like, I was successful, check, done, like close the book. At 45, So now, reevaluating my relationship with success and what that will look like in the future. And, having the luxury to, have a new path and a new journey, and having a new vision of what that success looks to me.
Gwen, how do you see money differently today, post selling your company, compared to before, when you weren't even sure if you could pay rent in those early days?
My goal was to build a business to support myself and to do better than my little Ralph Lauren salary.
That low bar that you mentioned.
That little low bar. And I was so driven by the creation, and creating excellence and making incredible products. So that was really my drive. I was never driven by accumulating money or watching, the balance go up. I look back on, I had my father's Uncle Burton, won the lottery in the 70s. And he played the lotto for years, and it was like, years and years. And he won $1 million in the 70s. And the story goes that he bought a Cadillac, and Aunt Betty continued to take her hot dog cart out in Jamaica, Queens for a few years and kept it going. And then it was time for her to retire. But that was my childhood story of winning the lotto. What do you do? I'm in a very privileged place where I can, now focus on giving back. And I can focus on doing something else that's really in line with my values and purpose.
So does that mean you won't be wheeling out your hot dog cart?
There
is a shift that you want to focus on giving back?
I guess I never had a hot dog cart, but, I could put my dirty laundry bags down.
Well, it's your metaphorical hot dog cart.
Exactly.
Which is selling detergents and home cleansers, or maybe starting another business.
They're all opportunities.
Well, thank you, Gwen. Thanks for sharing your story of building a successful business, of frightening credit card debt. I'm glad that you were able to pay off your credit card debt.
Yeah, I know. I think my parents are very grateful as well that, there wasn't email and text messages when I was backpacking around the world. So they would get a check-in call, here I was alive, and be able to sleep at night. The least they knew, the better.
All right. So in wrapping up, I'm hearing put yourself in uncomfortable situations and maintain very low expectations. If you could stick to those things.
Yes, but you need to have a real focus and real goals. It's a big contrast.
Yeah, and probably high standards of delivering something that is truly special and stands out.
Excellence. Focus on excellence.
Well, thank you, Gwen. Tell the Inspired Money listener where they can follow you and find out more. Yeah,
sure. You can find me on Instagram at Gwen L. Whiting. I'm also on LinkedIn at Gwen Whiting. And the brand is thelaundress.com.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andy.
So what was your favorite Inspired Money moment? I love Gwen's unwavering conviction in her business that allowed her to take much bigger risks than she did in her 401k. For the Laundress, it paid off handsomely. I also liked hearing about the power of authentic and true relationships, and of course, pushing yourself to be uncomfortable. If you had a different favorite Inspired Money moment, please let me know by posting a comment below. And for watching until the end, thank you for making it until the end. I want to send you an Inspired Money sticker and button. Go to inspiredmoney.fm/Andy, send me your name and address, and I will send you real mail. Thank you for joining me on this mission. Have an inspired week, and do something that scares you, because that's where the magic happens.